Hello there, welcome to Mindset Talk with me, your host, Jabu Zwani. Once again, Mindset Talk is a podcast that is based on a framework that I have developed that is called Mindset Solutions. This helps people to understand what are mindsets, what is the function of mindsets in our lives, how do they form, and how can you best create the kind of mindsets you need for the life that you want to live. Now, I mentioned on my last podcast about the negative mindsets and how they're building constantly without us being aware. It is a fact, it is scientifically proven fact that more than 60 to 70% of what we're receiving on a daily basis is negative, which basically means that the fact that mindsets are constantly building without us being aware because of our cognitive faculty of thought, we are constantly receiving structures that are negative to build our minds. Now, to be able to illustrate this point, think about it this way. Think about it when you have a dirty cup that is filled with all kinds of filth in it, and you try to put clean water in there. Now, it doesn't matter how clean and how pure the water is. The fact that the cup itself is dirty means that even clean water, when it gets into that cup, is going to become dirty. Now, if you think about the fact that so much of what builds, of what constructs our structure of thinking is negative, the same principle applies. It basically means that whenever you receive anything positive that is designed to build your life, when it gets processed into that negative structure of thinking, the outcome is negative. Your positive thoughts end up becoming infected. And I mentioned that just simply concentrating on positive thinking is not going to help you, because positive thinking has got to have substance of what it thinks positive about. You've got to have things to think positive on, and they've got to be processed in an environment that is also positive, that is designed to bring out the same outcome that you're trying to achieve. Now, maybe you are somebody who works and you find that, whenever you are at work and certain tasks are put in your way, you get nervous, you get stressed out, and then before you know it, you start making mistakes. Before you know it, you're delayed. Before you know it, you haven't done the task. Before you know it, you're running against time. And this can be the same pretty much with a lot of things in our lives as well. You have all pure intention to think about yourself as a husband, the honey-do list, and the wife gives you that honey-do list and says to you, honey, we've been waiting for you to fix that barn, or that those cupboards in the kitchen, or that bath in the toilet. And you just keep on delaying, and you keep on delaying, and at some point it begins to put a lot of strain on your relationship. All of a sudden she's not happy with what's going on. Not all of a sudden, actually, it's been happening over a couple of months, and all of your jokes don't work anymore. You try to pull the joke. And one of the jokes that I read on one of these cups was that, hey, women, if your man says that he's going to do something, he's going to do it. There's no need for you to keep on reminding him 6 months later. Yeah, I know it's funny, but there comes a time in a relationship when those things don't become funny, and all the negativity and all the inability to carry out the things you meant to carry out begins to put a strain in the relationship and begins to make her doubt you. And similarly, also in reverse. I mean, I'm not a woman, so I don't really know much about the kind of things that women don't do. My experience, sadly, is that a woman get a lot of things done. The only thing that they struggle with is the whole weight thing, or maybe their own studies, or maybe doing some of the important things that they want to do for themselves. But somehow they keep on pushing them back because of the children, because of other details that are taking place in their lives. So negative mindsets have a really fertile ground in our thinking. Now, if you think about your mind as a garden, and you think about the fact that in the garden you've got your soil, and the soil is germinated, lots and lots of what germinates our thinking is negative, which basically means that no matter how healthy the seed you put into your mind, it's going to find itself going into dead soil. Nothing will come out of it. What's going to grow from there is just tares and all kinds of weeds that you don't need in your life. It is important for us to process that there is so much negativity. You don't have to try to put yourself in places of negativity. They are around us all the time. So in order for us to be able then to overcome negative mindsets, and I want to speak about one particular mindset, which I'm going to spend quite a bit of time speaking on in the next coming episodes. The number one most negative mindsets, which causes a lot of destruction, which holds a lot of people captive, which causes a lot of insecurities, fear, a malfunction, you name it. The number one mindset is shame. In simplicity, shame, I describe it as the inability to meet the standard that has been set. And most of the time in shame, the standard is not even clear. And the person who decides on the standard is the one that can change the goalpost as and when they feel like changing the goalpost. Or if it's an industry, they change the goalpost all the time. You know, if you think about how we feel so inadequate, so much that we feel like we don't meet the standard, whether it be the standard in terms of our looks, whether it be the standard in terms of our intelligence, whether it be in the standard in terms of our abilities. The world is shaped in standards that people have to meet, varying standards that people have to meet in various situations. And our country, South Africa, is no different. There are many different standards that have been set by many different authorities in personal lives, in our own growing. You have our parents that may have set certain standards that we didn't always understand what those standards were. And you'd be sincerely and genuinely trying to, do whatever it is that you think they want, and then you're impressed, and then you go and you show them that you've done, and they still find something wrong. Are you one of those people who's constantly finding that the people in your life are finding something wrong with you and the things that you have done? That you've come to a place in your life where you don't even believe that you are able to do or achieve anything? That whenever you convince yourself to do things that are good for your life, you find yourself talking yourself out of doing those things that are good in your life because you don't believe that there's any point to it anyway? That, my friend, is the role of negative mindsets, specifically the shame mindset. Now, the shame mindset is not just a South African phenomenon, but it's a worldly phenomenon. Most of the humanity is plagued with standards that the humanity cannot meet. The perfection that does not exist in the world that has been set out in magazines as far as what beauty is for women, as far as what masculinity is for men, or these days what masculinity is not, or what femininity is not. Somewhere out there in the world, somebody is coming up with some standard, setting it apart, and depending on how much money they've got, they will run campaigns to tell us what these new standards are, from fashion to norms and practices, even in political spheres, even in democracies. I mean, there are constantly standards that are being set, changes that are being made, and the end result is that as human beings, we need to reach those standards, and if we fail to meet those standards, then we are not good enough, and if we're not good enough, then we are confined to boxes, restrictions, to all kinds of labels are placed on us to tell us what we're good at and what we're not good at, and what we are because of what we're good at, and what we are because of what we're not good at. And one of my favorite books on mindsets is a book by Dr. Carol Dweck, which is Mindset, the Psychology of Success. And she speaks about fixed mindsets and then growth mindsets. What she doesn't mention is what causes that sometimes. But shame can give you both. Shame can cause you to fix you to certain negative labels about who you are, and then, or even positive labels. A child that is being constantly praised as being highly intelligent, highly capable, as being better than other kids, they begin to see themselves, their own person, as being in a particular way in comparison to other people. And then they can grow up to be oppressive. They can grow up even to be to be shaming, in their language, condescending, insulting, sarcastic, and of course the N-word that we don't like to use, which is narcissistic. The standard is set by them. And one of the children of the shame mindset is narcissism, but I'm not going to talk about it today. You have the oppressive narcissistic person, and of course you have the oppressed narcissistic person. So the person that is constantly feeling like they don't meet the standard, that they're oppressed, this can produce a lot of wounds in them, and then they can have this mission in life to show everybody that they have been done wrong by the world, that they're great, the world doesn't know, or that they are, there's this pain that the world has to see, and they develop this affinity, this close affinity to pain and attach their identity to this pain. And this becomes the way, this is what becomes what they project to people. This becomes how they want people to relate to them. I'm one of those people. This was one of the challenges that I had in my own life because of my own history of whatever. I'm not going to talk about it now. But I had a lot of shame in my life, and I really felt that it was important for me, for people to know that I have been done wrong. And you know what, growing up, in fact, I can remember a couple of instances where I actually made up stories. Of maltreatment. And you know what? I can think of one particular company where I used to work at where I actually exaggerated the kind of oppression and the kind of vilifying this particular boss of mine did on me. Even though he was quite villain, he was quite a villain, or at least in my own estimation at the time. And it's probably something that I still have to work out in my own mind right now. But I remember that I actually made up stories about that whole story, and I actually exaggerated the details, quite a bit, And this is one of the ways that you can actually see that you are being run by a negative mind. Are you one of those people who feels the need to constantly spice up, to constantly exaggerate details, to try and bring out the dramatic effect and to be very illustrative in the way that you bring out your point, especially if the point is concerning either your credibility, either your abilities, your intelligence, or mistreatment or maltreatment. Exaggerated language is a reflection of a negative mindset of shame that is running and controlling your life. And as I've mentioned in my other podcast as well, and I'll go into detail in it a bit later on, that language is one of those tools that we can be able to look at to be able to identify from which mindset are we thinking. Because language is nothing but thinking out loud. So when we're thinking out loud and we're capturing thoughts that are in our minds, our language will reflect to us how we are processing life and what we are reflecting as we're speaking. Anyway, there's a lot that I can say about this, but I'm really, really enjoying this topic of mindsets, and I'm hoping that you are too. And I'm hoping that just like me, you are really crossing some boundaries here, and you're making some breakthroughs, and you're beginning to see that a lot of the malfunction that is taking place, maybe in your own life and maybe in your children's life, is not so much to blame the circumstances or situations around it, but actually it is the way of thinking, and you have control on the way you can think. And and taking on practical steps to help yourself to think correctly, putting yourself in places where you can build positive mindsets, which we'll talk about later on. For the purpose of not keeping the podcast too long, I'm not going to talk about it now, but we'll talk about how you can be able to build strong and positive mindsets later on. But right now, I'm just still concentrating on the role of negative mindsets, and I've just begun this podcast today speaking about the role of negative mindsets, specifically the number one most powerful, most destructive mother of all negative mindsets being shame. Shame, saying that you do not meet the standard, you are not adequate in yourself, you are not worthy in yourself. It's connected to worth and value, and this obviously then impacts the way we feel and our emotions. And if it doesn't produce positive emotions tend to take away from our physical energy, and we end up not giving our best in a lot of things that we do. And even if we are giving our best, we're giving our best with the wrong perspective and with the wrong kind of way of thinking, and then the outcome then does not end up being positive, but actually ends up being the negative one. And this is why no matter how zealous you were to lose weight, you ended up stopping the gym. That's why you never continued with some of those things that you intended on. That's why most of the New Year's resolutions actually end up at January 3. They're done. Anything after that is just striving and anxiety and just a source for guilt and one more reason why you are a failure. I don't want to be dramatic, but I suppose we all need to get it. Negative mindsets are not cool. We don't need them. We can do without them. Anyway, my name is Jabuzwan from Mindset Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. again, anchor.fm/mindset.solutions. And I am available also on, this podcast is available on Spotify and on Google and many other platforms. On Facebook as Jabu Zwani, on LinkedIn as Jabulani Zwani, and on Instagram as Jabu Zwani Profile. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a blessed day.